So Erin,
Great.
you're whipping up some dog treats.
I am.
Carrots,
I love this. Yes. Oh my gosh.
apple,
So
carrot, dog treats. Very fun.
they're so easy. Yeah, they're so easy. And I think any opportunity to make a homemade dog treat, because they're much easier than we think they are, and we control the ingredients. So I am whipping up, yes, apple, carrot, dog treats. Simple. I made a batch this morning. My dog loved it. If you watch this on social media, that was her like grabbing it out of my hand. So she loves them. So yours will too. So
Super cute.
before we jump into the recipe, we like to start off our cooking and our virtual hangouts by sharing a little bit of nutrition information. So I won't take up too much time, but this is important stuff because what we put in our body, we also want to think about what we're feeding to our pets as well. So I want to start us off by sharing this food for thought moment brought to you by Lily, one of our amazing sponsors as well. And I am highlighting carrots because I have shredded carrots to throw into our treats today, which is great. So you can also buy shredded carrots at the grocery store. So know that if you struggle with neuropathy or have some weakness in your hand, sometimes grating it is an arduous task. So you can find them already shredded, or grab a friend or a family member that wants to help you. But let's highlight carrots. So they are a root vegetable that is really, really nutrient dense. They're a great source of beta carotene, fiber, potassium, vitamin K, antioxidants. So they are a wonderful addition. We see them often in both our farm box deliveries and our CSA with our local community. So they are a true hit. And we also see them in lots of different colors because they come in different colors. So what I am using today is actually some shredded orange and purple, but we've seen yellow, we see white. So there are more colors than what the traditional orange that I think many of us are accustomed to seeing in the grocery store. And their flavor might vary a little bit. I have found that some tend to be a little sweeter than others, but generally speaking, they all have that delicious carrot flavor, and they really are just crunchy and fresh, and they're a wonderful addition to anything. They're a great source of fiber. So one medium carrot has 2 grams of fiber. So if you're adding a lot or you're cooking a lot, you get a relatively good amount of fiber. They're a great source of both soluble and insoluble fiber. So soluble fiber, and in particular, it's pectin. So the particular type of soluble fiber that we find in carrots is pectin. And we might know pectin for making jellies or jams. It's a thickening agent. And that's important. Soluble fiber is important for a number of reasons. So if you imagine pectin and what that does when we add it to dishes or we see it in recipes, it becomes gelatinous, right? It absorbs water. And that does a number of things when we consume it in food naturally. So number one, it causes the digestion of food and carbohydrates to slow down, which means that it causes carbohydrates or the naturally occurring starches in this root vegetable to hit the bloodstream at a slower rate, which means it's also a low glycemic food. So this, for those that are looking to control blood sugar, carrots are a wonderful natural addition to our ingredients and to our snacks. Soluble fiber also acts to feed our healthy gut bacteria. So it really supports a healthy immune system. And in addition, what soluble fiber does is it attaches to cholesterol. So it's really important for helping our body to rid of excess cholesterol, making it a heart healthy food. Now, there's also insoluble fiber in carrots, which is that roughage, which we know is so important for GI side effects like constipation and helping us have regular bowel movements. So from an overall gut and GI health perspective, carrots win across the board. So really wonderful addition. And of course, you can enjoy them in lots of different ways: raw, shredded, whole, steamed, roasted, carrot soup, chopped, diced. So they're super, super versatile. So we always encourage trying them in lots of different ways, including our apple, carrot, dog treats. So that is my food for thought moment. And so let's get cooking up for our dog treat. Hopefully many of you have these ingredients on hand. They're really simple. So let's get started. You do not need a bowl this large, but I am doing it so you can see what is in the bowl. So I have a bowl here. The first thing we're going to start with is 1 cup of, I'm using all-purpose flour. You can use brown rice flour. You can use a gluten-free flour if you need to. Even if you want to cut this in half and do half all-purpose, half whole wheat flour, you can do that as well. But I'm going to stick with 1 cup of all-purpose flour. From here, I'm adding half a cup of unsweetened applesauce. So there's no cinnamon, there's no added sugar, half a cup, little bit of liquid. So this goes in. Of course, if it's the fall, if you have apples, you want to make your own homemade applesauce, even better. Next goes in our shredded carrots. We're looking for about a cup. Again, I'm using that purple and orange variety. Use whatever you have on hand. Again, sometimes shredding can be a lot, or grating it can be a lot. So look for that in the store, or ask a friend to help you with some of that grating. And then I'm adding 1 large egg. So this is going to be our binder. So I just gave that a little whisk with my fork right before class. And then we're going to just combine this all together. So you want to make sure everything is really well mixed. And this will ultimately become sort of a sticky dough. And the texture will vary, you know, for all of us. So if you find that it's particularly wet or sticky, you can add a little more of your flour to this on an as needed basis. Add it 1 tablespoon at a time. This morning, my batch was a little wetter than I wanted, so I ended up adding 2 more tablespoons of flour, but this is actually turning out to be pretty darn good. So I have my dough formed, and I'll show you what this looks
amazing,
like.
Erin. I mean, without even a mixer, it worked really well.
Yeah, it goes really well. It comes together, and I have to tell you, it smells so good. Like, you get the fresh carrot and the apple, so it just smells really, really good. So once you have your dough all put together, I'm going to move this aside. We're going to pull a baking sheet because we're going to bake this in the oven. My oven is preheated for 350 degrees. And I have some parchment here. It's important that you have some parchment so it doesn't stick. You can use a cookie scoop if you want, or I just use the old 2-spoon method. I'll clean off my spatula, and all we'll do is just scoop little bits, and I won't take you through all of this, but we're going to just add small dollops on top on our parchment sheet here. And this will make anywhere from 16 to 18 little cookies, depending on how big your dollops are. So you can make them a little bit smaller, or you can, if your pet has a big appetite, you can make them a little bit larger, right? So we'll stop there for now. So once your tray is all filled with your little dollops, what I like to do is use a flat edge sort of icing. Of course, you could use the back of a spoon as well. And we're just going to use this and press this down a little bit. Of course, you can use your hands, but we're just going to flatten this a very little bit just to spread it out. And now we have these imperfect, absolutely perfect dog treats. And so once this is pressed down, all of your cookies are out. We will pop this in the oven and we'll bake them. 350 for anywhere from 15 to 18 minutes. They will have a little bit of give because of the wheat and the flour, but you want them to have a nice golden brown. They'll be slightly brown on the bottom. And you want to make sure that they are, you know, that they just feel a little firm, but you get some give when you press them, okay? So as if we're putting them in the oven, 15 to 18 minutes, keep checking because depending on if they're a little bit larger, they might take a little more. If they're smaller, you might want to pull them out a little early. And then what you end up having are these little dog treats. So as you can see, they're slightly brown on the bottom. You give them a little lift. They break apart, you know, they're a little doughy. So my dog loves them. If you want to top it with a little bit of peanut butter for an extra snack, they're made for a really great snack. They have a nice soft texture. You can store these in an airtight container for 5 to 7 days. The recipe also says if you want to have a little bit longer of a lasting time, you can add a little bit of salt to it. I did not do that because these will likely not last that long for my dog, but that's a different story. But anyway, they're really great. She loves them. For if you have a senior dog that has a little bit of chew issues with dental, they're soft enough that it shouldn't aggravate their teeth. So this is a really great homemade treat for dogs of all ages. So hopefully you'll make them and hopefully your dog will enjoy them just as much as mine did. So those are our apple carrot dog treats. Delicious. Oops, as I throw them down.
Love it. Awesome. Where
really
is
simple.
Kiki?
Oh my gosh. I know. Kiki.
Come on, Kiki. You got to get a little taste tester. And know what's so nice about this one? You could taste test it. You could. You could. I
Dare
mean,
I
it's
taste it?
apples. It's apples, carrots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could taste it. I don't
Oh,
know,
yeah, they're not bad.
Kiki's going to
Oh
have a
my
whole
gosh.
different take on that, but
Ah, I
you
know.
know,
Kiki, come here. Oh my gosh, she's so funny. I hear her.
we would
We'll get her to
never
hop up.
ever taste our dog's treats, but these, I'm like, you could totally
They're
taste
actually
that,
not
Erin.
bad. Come here. You want a treat? Come on up.
Kiki.
Come on up. Come on up. Up. Good girl. Come on up. There we go.
Oh, she's such a love. Look at her. Good job, Kiki.
Pets
Love
do
it.
not lie.
They do not lie.
She
She
loves
is not
them.
moving from that chair. She is not moving.
I'm the worst. The worst with treats. I am the worst, as you can tell. All right. But
Uh,
they're healthy and
well,
she
I
gets
think
fiber,
this
and
is
that's
a
good for her.
yes, I think this is a great segment. We're going to come in and introduce, and here she is, Lisa Serad, our guest for this evening, front and center. Lisa, I'm sure that's bringing lots of smiles to your face there. Yeah, for sure. So, Lisa, so just to give a little bit of a background on Lisa, Lisa is the program coordinator at the Gerald B. Shreiber Pet Therapy Program at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, where she connects dogs and children who need a dose of laughter and encouragement. In this role, she recruits, she screens, she trains therapy dogs, and she raises them to pet therapy overseas, and dozens of volunteers should participate in the program. I'm sorry, I didn't say that well. She raises awareness of pet therapy and oversees dozens of volunteers who participate in the program. Lisa also created a facility dog program at CHOP, where full-time staff members work with specially trained dogs every day, adding a layer of service previously unavailable from volunteers doing monthly or biweekly visits. Before coming to CHOP, Lisa held management roles in real estate, legal, higher education industries, including the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. She worked as a pet therapy volunteer and a professional dog trainer for more than 25 years, and was a therapy dog evaluator for 20. A lot of experience here, Lisa. We thank you for coming. We all know what our pets do for us. And all of you, just so you know, I'm going to pop a video. There's a beautiful pet video program video. I'm going to pop that in YouTube. But Lisa, I'm going to let you take it from here. And Kiki, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Kiki's better behaved than Taro. Taro's looking at me like I'm comfortable over here. I'm fine. But his picture is in my slide deck. So
yeah, well, Kiki has a whole plate through of treats
yeah.
in front of her, so that helps.
And my dog is looking at me like, are we not supposed to take a walk or
right. Aw.
Yeah, he'll just have to wait a little bit. So I'm just going to put some slides up, and I'm going to try and keep it short and leave more time for questions. I'm sure I'm trying to cover as many bases as possible. So at least with your questions, we can morph into the direction that everybody wants to go.
Wonderful.
Okay, can everybody see the slides?
Yep, you're good to go, Lisa.
Okay, the big red one is mine. That's Taro.
Aw.
He worked at CHOP for about 7 years. He recently retired. Dilly is the other dog. Dilly is owned by CHOP. He's the facility dog that we got some funding to acquire. Hopefully I can advance the slides. So I was just going to cover today the media makes a mess out of this. I was just going to go over some differences between working dogs. The media calls emotional support animals, therapy dogs, service dog. It's a mess. So I just wanted to put some clarification out there and just a quick intro to pet therapy, talk about our program, which is kind of based on peer review programs. So a lot of programs are similar to ours, and then just address if anybody wants to volunteer with their dog. So like I said, the media makes a mess out of all of this. So I kind of tiered level of training. The highest level of training you'll see are our police, military, and search and rescue dogs. Taro and I train alongside a lot of these folks. We had a group of canine officers who used to every year come and do a show for the kids at CHOP. And it was really amazing what they can do with these dogs. So the highest tier of training is pretty much the police, military, search and rescue. Service dogs come next. Service dogs, most of them have about 2 years of training. They have to be task trained to support someone with a disability. That's the key differentiator between a service dog and an emotional support animal. Service dogs have to be task trained to help support a disability, whether it's physical or psychiatric. Therapy and facility dogs, they're pretty much the same thing. The difference is it a job or is it a hobby? So a facility dog is a dog that has a job working with a handler in a facility. And a therapy dog are wonderful volunteers who come in, they train their dogs, they bring their dogs in. Sure, we do a little fine tuning once they get in, but they're wonderful dogs that our volunteers share with our patients, families, and staff. Now, emotional support animals, I get calls from our social workers all the time. Emotional support animals aren't required to have any training whatsoever. There are a lot of scams online that get you to pay $200 to get a cute little vest and a card and a letter. You don't need any of that. You need a letter from a mental health professional saying that you need this dog for whatever reason you need the dog, cat, or anything else. The key thing with the emotional support animals is they don't have the same access rights as service dogs. We have a lot of people who bring their kids to the hospital with an emotional support animal, with their letter that they paid $200 for online. And I have to break it to this family that you just got scammed. So when social workers call me for advice, my questions I usually ask them, does the family own their home? And do they have a restrictive HOA? Because if you own your home and you don't have a restrictive HOA, you can have whatever pet you want. An emotional support animal is a pet that makes you feel better. The additional laws come in for air travel and pet-free housing. So if you own your home and you don't have an HOA and can have any pet you want, you don't need to go to the expense to get it declared an emotional support animal. So I just like saving people money when I can, and like to throw that out there. Because when people are in a vulnerable spot, that's when these scammers, they just come in to take your money. And I hate when I see that, and I see it often at the hospital. So just a quick intro to therapy dogs. The term was first used by Dr. Levinson, working with teenagers, trying to be an icebreaker, use the dogs as icebreakers. The different terms that are tossed around, animal-assisted activities, the key thing with those is they're not goal-directed. Animal-assisted therapy, there's a goal there. That's mostly what the facility dogs do. Their handlers are there every day at whichever hospital or school, and they can work with teams to set goals for the patients and utilize the dogs to help reach those goals. And animal-assisted interventions is a term used interchangeably for both. So yes, I did put a mask on my dog, but I put treats in that mask. There were treats in there. That's why I got him to chew it. 110-pound dog's not going to do what he doesn't want to do unless you put treats in there. So he's a good sport. So just now, we're not big enough to have conferences yet, but we've had several facility dog summits over the last 6 years. The first one I attended, these are all people who work with a dog in some capacity in their job, in a hospital, nursing home, clinic, whatever. So the first one, we had about 35 people. The second one, we had about 50. The third one, we had 75. And the one we had last year, we had over 100 people. Mostly pediatric, but it's getting out. It used to be just child life specialists with the dogs. Now we're seeing doctors, art therapists, music therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, and even physicians working with dogs. So they usually, most hospitals, we do a lot of information. Oh, my dog's making an appearance. Can we see Tara?
Oh, so good.
He doesn't want to be on, sorry. But we do a lot of literature exchange. So we base these best practices on what a lot of our peer institutions are doing. Pediatric hospitals tend to be a little tighter than adult hospitals because we have all different extra rules to protect the kids, as it should be. So the facility dogs usually do goal-oriented visits And the volunteers, we call them social visits. They round on the units. The volunteers don't have to glimpse into the medical record that staff do. So they really don't know what goals need to be set. So they're really there just cheering up the patients, making them forget they're in the hospital for a few minutes. And we assign volunteers generally to units that have kids over 3. We find the little ones have a lot of trouble getting redirected sometimes and do some unkind things to the dogs. So most of our units do have dogs assigned. Onco's done a little bit differently because the team wants everybody's ANC number to be over 200 to interact with the dog, and they want that ANC rising versus declining. So what we normally do for pet therapy with our onco patients is we invite them to the playroom based on how their medical team feels they're doing. And then we get a lot of staff requests for pet therapy. So just today, I had a volunteer with a little 4.5-pound dog, and quite a few of the kids we went to see were sleeping. So we had nurses and residents passing that little dog around. Of course, we're really strict with hand hygiene, so everybody had to clean their hands before and after. But they were playing past the little 4.5-pound Koji around our ICU today. So we saw a lot of big smiling faces up there.
Oh, that is so cute.
And I didn't know how many of you had dogs that you were interested in volunteering somewhere. So I thought I'd throw some information in. I was a therapy dog evaluator for over 20 years. And when I started working at CHOP, I volunteered there for 20 years, along with other places. And when I took the position there 9 years ago, I was like, I did your therapy dog eval. Yeah, I want more eyes on these dogs before they come in. So I kind of retired from doing therapy dog evaluations. But I still have some good info on what goes on in the tests. So the main thing is, does your dog like people? Are they safe around people? And are they under your control? We have some people with these little dogs and they think, well, the dog doesn't need to know any basic obedience because I'll just pick it up. But if there's a code called or something and everybody's scrambling, your dog needs to know some basic obedience. And the other thing I saw far too many times as a dog trainer and a therapy dog evaluator is, does your dog want to do this or do you? I see so many people who they want to do this. They care. They want to make patients feel better. They want to help patients forget they're in hospital for a little while. And the dog really does not want to be doing this. So that's one thing you have to think about. Is this something you want to do? Is it something your dog wants to do? Hopefully it's something you both want to do. Another bit of advice, where do you want to volunteer? One of the things that disappoints me all the time when people call me, they're so excited. They're like, my dog just passed the test with group X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I'm sorry, we don't take group X, Y, and Z. So if there's a place where you want to volunteer, find out which pet therapy registries they accept and go find out what the process to take the test with that registry is, rather than just hearing from somebody that somebody's doing tests and you go take the test and nobody around you even accepts that. The reason we accept different registries at different places, usually it's the longevity of the program, how robust their testing is, how robust their insurance is, things like that. And look into what they require from volunteers. Some places want you to volunteer once a week. Most places, because your dog will have to usually be bathed right before you go in, most places ask for once a month. I've gone to some intro sessions with some groups and they want you to fundraise, even though you're volunteering. And they have all these awards. And when you find out it's the person who raised the most money gets that award. So find out if they want you to fundraise. We don't require any fundraising, but there are other hospitals and facilities that do require fundraising. Find out what health requirements they have. We have, our volunteers have to prove immunity to various childhood diseases. We require flu vaccines. We require COVID vaccines. And it's to protect the patients and the volunteers as well. Not every place makes you do that. If you don't want to go through all of that, I found that nursing homes and hospices are less restrictive. It's hospitals, especially pediatric hospitals, that have more layers to volunteering. And almost everybody is going to require background checks. It's always good to ask. Some of the organizations, CHOP, we have an endowment that covers them. Our volunteers don't have to pay for their background checks, but other places you might have to pay for your background So it's just some questions to ask if there's a place you have in mind where you want to volunteer. And I've done a whole lot of talking. So what questions do people have? I tried to give it plenty of wiggle room in case anybody had questions.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. That was great. Sue had a question earlier, just going back to something that you said initially about travel and laws and traveling with your pet. So can you reiterate a little bit about travel laws with your pet? Are emotional support animals, if you have a letter, are you eligible? Does it have to be a working dog?
No, with emotional support animals, the airlines are changing. The airlines used to just accept them just like a service dog. But with more incidents of people getting bitten because they don't require any training, some of the airlines are cracking down on that. So it's best to call your airline. If you have an emotional support animal and you have a letter from your mental health professional saying you need that animal to travel with you, call your airline and they can walk you through their process.
Okay.
They should not charge you extra to fly with that animal. Now, a service dog, you don't even have to have that. A service dog, you just have to present the dog. They can ask you 2 questions. They can ask you, is that a service dog required for a disability? And they can ask you, what tasks has it been trained to do? They cannot ask you to demonstrate them. They cannot ask what's wrong with you. They can only ask what tasks the dog has been trained to do.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. If anyone has had any experience or even is interested in having their dog trained, definitely Lisa is the person to ask. And maybe we can stop sharing your screen and we can go through some of our questions, Lisa. I know Mary has her hand raised. So Mary, if you want to come off of mute, go for it.
Well, I just want to thank you for this program. Once again, Unite for Her. And Lisa, it's so nice to see you. I have 2 therapy dogs. One is napping behind me, and they're actually both going through certification with their 3rd organization due to some insurance issues. So I would like to say
a lot of groups are running into that. Yeah. Thank you for working with them.
And some are doing better with it than others. So Bonnie passed her Bright and Beautiful last week. Rocket is being tested tomorrow. They're already certified through CCC. What I wanted to say was find a list, put together a list of therapy organizations that certify and train in your area. And I like to back what Lisa said, find out what their requirements are, who accepts them, who doesn't. Some hospitals accept all of them, some don't accept 1 or 2. So you need to know that. I volunteer for an organization that does some other hospitals in Philadelphia, although I don't travel to Philly. I do memory care at a nursing home for them, which is what I love. And, the difference that it makes, I've been doing it for 5 years there, and the patients do turnover, but the people that I've spent the longest time with, they verbalize now, they remember, and I take a dog every other week, I take a different dog. They remember who the dog is. They know when they mix the dogs up and they're sorry. And I let them, even though a lot of therapy organizations don't want you to give treats, I have permission to let them feed her lunch when we go. They're allowed to feed her lunch. And it's wonderful to see the difference in cognition for the nanas and papas, or old peoples, as we call them. And then we visit the people that we know. My mother-in-law is there, but we also volunteer for an organization in Bucks County that focuses on children's programs. So if you're interested in that, see what the organization you're interested in does with respect to different populations of people. We do a 1st grade, a 2nd grade. We do special needs students in the alternative school and autistic kids at the Bucks High Schools. We do court companion program. And we just finished our training for NOVA for children who are going to testify in their abusers' trials. There's a separate waiting room for them. And we're in dependency court. So most of the kids that we're dealing with are kids who are in some sort of custody situation. Either they're fostered by county foster parents or they're with their grandparents. And I will say that the nurses in the hospital, the doctors, the lawyers in court, the social workers, and the attendants at the nursing homes and hospitals need that comfort as much as any of the people that you're visiting. It's such a wonderful thing to do.
That's wonderful.
And Mary, to piggyback on what you said, there was a nursing home I used to volunteer very early on when I started volunteering with my dogs. And the director was flabbergasted. She was like, these people, they don't remember what they had for breakfast. They don't remember who visited them yesterday, but they remembered a dog they had when they were 8.
Absolutely.
It is really amazing.
And it's amazing how many people had collies.
Yeah.
It, you know, and they remember their dogs growing up, and you know, it's really a way to give back to our community in a way that a lot of us might not be able to. So, and I have collies, they need jobs. They're working dogs, or they get in trouble, especially that one behind me. So,
I was going to say, Mary, is it okay if I pop you up on the spotlight so we can see your animals behind you?
oh, sure. I think only one is in here, but I'll get out of the way.
No. Oh, so good.
That's Bonnie Jean.
Must have had a hard day at work.
Not today. We're not visiting because of that insurance issue, but she's helping me to remind her brother of what his therapy tasks are, so he passes his test tomorrow night.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, they're good kids. If I can get Rocket in here, I will. I think
he's good.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. I love that, and I think that just goes
for what you do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It really brings light to the different populations that can be served by pet therapy dogs. That's amazing.
And you know, after we go to court, we come back through Doylestown, and we go through the Starbucks, and it even makes like the baristas happy, right? Oh, do you want a pop cup? Oh, can we give your dog a treat? You know, it's really fun for everybody.
Yeah. Good. Oh, that's wonderful. So I have a question for you, Lisa. You know, we've talked a lot about hospitals here in our Philadelphia area, and I'll pop on with you, having pet therapy dogs. But we know that we have individuals from all over the country. So if someone was interested in finding out if their hospital or the location at which they might be on that given day or for that treatment has a pet therapy program, who typically is the person that they would reach out to? How would they know?
Typically, their volunteer services department, because most of these are volunteers. If they are lucky enough to have a program where they have paid staff, it's usually run in a pediatric hospital. It's run out of Child Life. In an adult hospital, it might be run by recreation therapy. So their clinicians might have a better idea of that. If it's a volunteer program, they should be able to reach out to volunteer services.
Okay.
Now, there's always demand. I know my dad was a patient in an adult hospital a couple of years ago, and I know David from HOP is the director of volunteers. I knew David. I reached out to David. I was like, hey, my dad's in there. He's up on cardiac. Can you put him on your list? And they just didn't have any volunteers. So, yeah, so they're in demand, and we just don't have enough. So we think it is National Volunteer Appreciation Month this month. So we do appreciate all our volunteers.
Absolutely. Above and beyond. If someone was interested in getting connected with a therapy dog outside of a hospital in a private location or for an event, how would that work?
Most don't do that because of safety issues these days. You know, they don't want to send their volunteers to someone's home. Who knows what? Sadly, that's the world we're living in these days. So, you know, if they really want to connect with a therapy dog, some libraries have programs. There are, you know, your public library might have a program.
Good.
But for safety issues, most volunteer organizations do not permit in-home visits.
Okay. Okay. Well, at least we know that we can ask,
I've done a few back in the day. I knew someone there was a patient who was deaf and blind, and I worked with his family. But these days, with things the way, I mean, that was 25 years ago, things are different now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And if anyone else has had any experience with therapy dogs, or, even is currently, when you go into your hospital, or if you're going in for treatment and there's a therapy dog there, we'd love to hear what your experience is like. I know when I worked in clinical oncology in one of the hospitals in the city, which was not part of the Penn Health system, but we had therapy dogs come into our oncology floor periodically. And Mary's right. I mean, as soon as they came on, we know that they're there for the patients, but the nurses, when I was up there, it's like, oh, how quickly can I get to that dog? Can I say hello? And it just changes the whole mood of the floor of the environment. Early
in COVID, my dog was the only one working at shop. We had no volunteers permitted in. I reached out to our head of infection control, and I asked her, I said, could my dog keep working? Mm-hmm. And he went from 3 days a week to 5 days a week. And we would just cruise through the emergency department. Now, we didn't know what we didn't know back in those days. And we would do visits for the emergency department staff. And there was one time I took them down a closed hallway and I just gave people tennis balls, and they were throwing tennis balls to the dog. And the head of the emergency department ran into me the next day in the parking garage and said to me, you and your dog were on the ED the other day, weren't you? And I said, yeah, we were. She said it was palpable. She said it was palpable that the dog was there. That's with the staff.
Yeah. Mary?
I can tell you that in the Philadelphia area, Penn Oncology has therapy dogs. Some of their other departments do as well. And those are comfort caring canine dogs for the most part. I'm not sure if they have other organizations in there. Doylestown Hospital has therapy dog programs excuse me.
They're doing their job.
We know everything that happens in the neighborhood. The squealer was Rocket. The squealer. So Doylestown has something. I'm not sure Fox Chase or Jeans have something. Penn has something. Pedia Manor has a program, and Doylestown has a program for their pediatrics, their pediatric patients.
Nice. Lots of access.
Yeah, and a lot of libraries do. We do the Bucks County. We do the Doylestown Library once a month.
Yeah, a few of my volunteers also volunteer at Fox Chase. What I love about a lot of my volunteers is they volunteer multiple places. So I know at one point, I think I'm pretty sure Fox Chase has a program because quite a few of my volunteers volunteer there as well.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm so curious, Lisa. So if anyone is interested in having their dog be trained or certified, how long is that process? And what are some of those tasks that will be required of the dog, and I guess is really proving whether or not they might be a good fit for having this type of job?
Well, that's the main thing. A dog, I tell people all the time, a dog is born to be a therapy dog. You can't make them. You can start out with a good dog and do a lot of socializing and basic obedience training, but you can't make them like people. They have to have a curiosity about people. They have to like people. That's the thing you can't control. But if you have a dog that is curious about people and likes people, just a lot of socialization and, basic obedience. Now, my dog does more advanced obedience and we do agility as well, but that's not a requirement. You just want the dog to follow your instructions. Especially we have a lot more kids who are suicidal. So you can't really ever drop your leash, but the dog is a comforting presence to them. And families, when they want a picture, they want the dog and their child. They really don't want you. So since we can't drop our leash because we don't know if that patient is suicidal or not, I always tell the volunteers, keep a thumb hooked in your leash, have your dog do a sit stay. And then what I do is I tell the parent or guardian who's taking the picture, how about if I stand next to you? Because this way the dog will look at the camera. And it gets me out of the picture, and they don't want me there anyway. And they get the picture of their kid and the dog.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
basic obedience. You just need basic obedience. You don't need anything, we do hand signals and a lot of things like that. But that's not required. It's basic obedience. And all of your major therapy dog organizations, or I can't even speak. I'm sorry, it's been a day. Organizations will have what the different requirements are listed on their website.
Good to know.
But they're either born to do it, and the socializing is a key thing. I know one time when I've had 6 different dogs, either volunteer or work with me, and one time I was taking one of them for just to do some socializing, and my mother was here, and I said, I'm going to take him to PetSmart, do some socializing, and I pulled out of my driveway, and my mother said, wait, the PetSmart's over there. And no offense to anyone, but I was like, the PetSmart with nothing but white people is over there. I'm going to go 2 towns over so he can see all different kinds of people. That's really important. I get a lot of volunteers who may be from the suburbs or rural areas, and they come into the city and the dogs, someone is in full Muslim garb and the dog's unnerved by it, or, any number of things because the dogs just haven't experienced it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Can you speak a little bit, Lisa? And if anyone has any questions, I don't want to interrupt if someone wants to say something, but I have a question about dogs that we're hearing play a role in things like helping with if someone has a low blood sugar, if someone is going to have an epileptic seizure, so there's these therapy dogs that are, thank you, service dogs that
those dogs
are acutely trained to that. Okay.
They're trained to do that. They do a lot of that at Penn Vet's Working Dog Center and a lot of other service dog organizations. Usually it's a lot of scent training. Now, some people tell me that their dog naturally knows. That's not a task that they're trained to do. So that really doesn't qualify them as a service dog. And actually, I had one family that I knew that the patient had a service dog. They were up on neurology. And I ran into the mom and I was like, where's your dog? She said, I had to send it home with my husband. The dog was trained to alert on seizures. And because they were on the neurology unit, every time they would take the dog for a potty break, the dog would alert on like every kid. And they said the dog was going crazy. So they just decided to leave the dog with a relative that would take care of the dog till the patient was discharged. Wow. So those things, and I went to a really great presentation at a working dog conference, and there was a gentleman there, and he worked for one of the government agencies, and he was a diabetic, and he had a dog that was trained to detect blood sugar levels. And he said he was talking to another person at an airport one time who also had a service dog, and they struck up a conversation. And he said to the guy, what is your dog's alert rate? And the guy said about 50%. And the guy from the government said, are you happy with that? That's like a coin toss. Your dog's alert rate should be better than that. It should be 75, 85%. And he went into his conference. His piece of the conference was about testing dogs and testing them and accuracy and having data points around how many times they're accurate for both police and service dogs like that. What if the dog misses?
Right.
And what if the dog misses and you have a seizure in a place that's not good to have a seizure? Not that a seizure is ever good to have, but, I had a friend who had a seizure detection dog, and she was a very petite lady, and she had a large dog. And that dog was trained, if he couldn't find a place to get her to sit down, he was trained to brace himself for her to fall on him.
Oh, my gosh.
So, those dogs are really highly trained.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow.
But that falls under the category of a service dog.
Okay. Could a dog of any age be trained to be a service dog? Is it typically when they're younger, it's better to get them situated, or?
I have a cousin, and her husband they're very comfortable. Let's just put it that way. And they had a couple puppies, and they asked me to reach out because we used to do some training over at Penn Vet's Working Dog Center. And I reached out to Dr. Otto, who's the executive director over there. And I said, my cousin's husband's diabetic, type 1 diabetic, and he wants his puppy trained. And she said to me, anybody will say they'll train that dog, but they're just trying to part you from your money. You're really better off getting a dog that was bred to be a service dog. Your pet normally does not want to be your service dog. So she could have very easily taken his money. And she said, a lot of people will take your money, but you're better off. These service dog organizations, they have a whole breeding consortium. And what they do is, say a Seeing Eye organization has a litter of puppies. They'll test those puppies at 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And the dogs that have aptitude for being a Seeing Eye dog, they'll keep. The others will go into the breeding consortium. If a dog has an aptitude for being a service dog, nose sniff dog, it'll be placed in a different service dog organization. Some people with MS might have mobility issues and might need a stability dog. If a dog has aptitude for that, it'll go into a facility or organization that'll train for that. And some of them are just a little crazy and the government likes them. And some of them might go get placed in the CIA. So, and that Seeing Eye organization will get puppies back later that have the aptitude for what they're looking for. So these dogs, they're bred to do this. They pick their major and they train them for their major versus getting a dog and trying to train your own dog. So sometimes it works. I'm not saying it doesn't work or it can't work, but this is the advice of, the executive director of Penn Vet's Working Dog Center told me to tell my cousin's husband, just go get a service dog. Don't try and train your own.
Yeah. And I guess there's certain breeds, like Mary was saying, certain breeds are high energy, very smart, have to be stimulated, and they just they are more likely to perhaps be a service dog of some sort.
Or sometimes not, Another thing I noticed, a lot of service dog organizations are using a lot of labs, Goldens and crosses of the two. And if you notice, they're breeding them smaller. And I asked that one time, because I have shown dogs in the past and I'm used to the breed standards. And they said to me, people who have a service dog generally have to go places. They have to go to school, they have to go to work, they have to travel. So if you have a 120-pound lab, it's hard to take it on an airplane, where if you have a 65 or 75-pound lab, it's easier to get them on an airplane or have them under your desk at work or at school, or travel on a bus. So the service dog organizations are taking them a little bit smaller.
Interesting. So much to know. And learn.
There's a lot, I've been going to the working dog conferences for a lot of years, and it's so much stuff it doesn't even register, but they have a really good handle on what they're doing. And if anybody's interested in getting a service dog, anybody can hang out a shingle and say that they're a service dog trainer. There's an organization called Assistance Dogs International. It's a .org on their website, and it's spelled out, Assistance Dogs International. They're kind of like, if anybody's familiar with Hospitals Joint Commission, they're like the Joint Commission of service dog organizations. So they accredit organizations every 5 years, and their accreditation process is really intense. It's the best of the best are affiliated with Assistance Dogs International. When CHOP was looking to partner with a service dog organization, there are a couple organizations out there that were trying to push dogs on us, and they really didn't have any longevity to their program. And they really weren't sure what they were training the dog for. And what I whittled down was, I went to four or five different organizations that were members of Assistance Dogs International. You're less likely to get scammed. Those organizations that are accredited by them have been doing this a long time. They care about their clients and they care about the dogs. And I tell people, do your homework, do more homework into the service dog that you hopefully will have for 8 or 10 years than a car that you'll have for 4 or 5.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I popped that link in the chat if anyone is interested. Yep, absolutely.
They're a great organization.
Good. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Any other questions, or anyone want to share any experiences that you may have had or how you've benefited from a therapy dog, a service dog? We'd love to hear.
Or even your pet dog. They're all our emotional support animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though mine's whining for dinner right now. 115 pounds whining for dinner.
Hi. I just wanted to say that I'm really thankful that you decided to do this. I've actually been spinning something like this up in my brain as well. Because I think a lot of people are, as you mentioned, misinformed and don't understand the rules, the dogs, the work that they do. I was a canine handler for many years, handled explosives detection and narcotic detection dogs. Then I went into schools, became a behavior. They called me a behavior specialist. That's a little bit of an overstatement. I was a therapy dog handler, and the kids, behaved in exchange for time with the dog. So I have a bit of experience. I am curious because I have certified in the therapy dog world I am down in South Carolina, by the way. But I have certified through the Alliance of Therapy Dogs, which to me to be
I've gotten some great volunteers from them.
Okay, I was going to say background check. They require the CGC certification, and the insurance was appropriate. They seemed to me to be very dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's type program. So I just wanted to get your sort of input on. They're a national.
They are one of the 4 organizations that we accept.
Good. I wanted to be sure.
I like their process that they do the 3 visits after the initial test, because I was an evaluator for one of the other organizations, and my feeling was you're just looking at a dog on one afternoon and its life, and maybe you got that dog on a good day, which is why luckily we have a partnership with Penn's Veterinary Hospital, where any dog before it comes into CHOP, it goes over to Penn Vet for a physical and behavioral workup, and then they have 4 visits with me. So it's 10 to 12 hours we spend together, and I'm observing the dog's behavior.
Yeah.
And the handlers. My background, I have a lot of coaching in my background, and some handlers need a little coaching.
Yes.
But don't we all, and I tell people all the time, how many of us have a friend that could totally pass our background checks and maybe shouldn't work with kids? We all have that friend. They're a lot of fun, but.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I really, will always jump in future therapy dog or dog in general or working dog conversations. It's a real.
Thanks for all the work you've done with dogs.
Oh, thank you.
I'm preaching to the choir with how well trained our police and search and rescue dogs are.
Yeah, I did a little SAR work with a task force here in South Carolina.
Yeah,
with a German Shepherd, and I was on one legitimate search. At the end of the line, what you find in a lot of search and rescue became not my favorite thing. So the narcotics and the explosives were more fun.
Yeah.
You find what works for you, I guess.
Yes. And then the end of the career when I was doing the therapy work, truly the most rewarding with the children, and hope to get back at it here as soon as I get a little more energy up.
Well, I hope you get that energy up soon.
Me too. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great. Wonderful. Anyone else want to share before we wrap up? I also popped the second organization that Drew mentioned in the chat if anyone is interested, but anyone else, any other questions or comments you want to share for Lisa? We have a nice, small, intimate group. Okay. Wonderful. Well, I guess with that, we will wrap up our virtual hangout for this evening. But Lisa, thank you so much for spending this time with us and just sharing your knowledge and expertise. We are so thankful for you.
Absolutely my pleasure. And if I can save somebody some headache, heartache, or a few bucks, I'm happy to.
Wonderful. We all appreciate that for sure. If anyone is interested in connecting with you or reaching out if they have questions, are they able to do that, or could they email you, Lisa?
Yeah, the best thing to do is we have an email address at CHOP. It's pet therapy, as if it's one word, no dot, no hyphen, just PETTHERAPY at chop.edu. That'll go to me.
Wonderful. I just popped that email right into the chat. So yeah, wonderful. Well, we appreciate, and Mary, Drew, thank you for sharing your experience with us as well. And hopefully this will give some insight into, finding an organization where in your local area, if you're outside of the Philadelphia region. So,
or if you're looking for a service dog.